We're back, and it's COMP123, and it's week 11, lesson 11, part 3. We just finished doing this little example of this control. And there's one control I'm missing for your assignment, right? Which I'm going to put in here now. But the question is, like I said, I've got all these controls, and I want to see what each control has, right? Is there a quick way to do that, right? To find out what the control itself is an object, obviously, right? And if I right-click onto it, right, as an example, there is a bunch of other controls here that we haven't seen. Like, for example, I have something called peak definition, go to definition. These are kind of two things you can always look at. Let's look at the peak definition thing. If I go to peak definition for what my reset age text box is, it's going to show me where it exists. That's all it does here, right? What about if I go to this one, right? So I'm going to kill this one. Hold on a second. Right click, and then I go to peak definition. Whoa, okay, this one's interesting. It tells me that this is one of the controls in my text box base control form or class. And these are all the different kinds of controls. Let me see if I can, instead of peeking into it, I look at the definition. So right click, and I go to definition. Go to definition actually opens up the entire definition for my control. And these are all the methods. And this is, it says, look, abstract class, which means never gets instantiated. Text box base. This is the base class that we can look at. It says it's a derivative or extends type control. So control is a super duper class, right? And if you notice, these are different kinds of things. Size, defaults, you know, this, I'm actually looking at the underbelly of C# here, right? And what I'm doing is I'm going through and I'm looking for all the different kinds of controls. One of them is this select all prop method, right? Now, if I actually click on this thing to expand it, I can see that the select all method is a stub property, right? Why? It's an abstract class, right? I really need to look at the text box control, which inherits from text box base, in order for me to do that, right? My text box control actually, right? This text box base is the base class. My text box control itself, and by the way, it's also a partial, right? Well, no, in this case it's not. But my text box control, I want to see it. How do I look at my text box control and see all the different methods and properties of that? Well, I can always go back to my design view for a second. And if I go back to Solution Explorer, I have some options. If I right click on my project itself, right, I have the ability to look at different options here. Same thing with my form. If I look at my form, right click onto it, I can look at things like my view code, the designer, and all this kind of stuff. But one thing I'm not seeing, if I go to view, is something called the object browser. Now, we haven't gone there yet. I'm not going to test you on this, but this is another tool for you guys to use. Let's click on object browser. What object browser does is it looks at the different objects that are in my project. So here, if you notice, lesson 11 part 1, I'm going to look inside the project. I'm going to look inside the input form. I'm going to look inside the base types in the form, right, in the container control. I can keep scrolling down, and then it's the actual form itself, the input form. If I look at it, the input form will tell me a bunch of properties and methods that are kind of associated with this control, and one of them is this these controls, these ages and labels and whatever. So there's a first name label, first name text box, age label, age text box. Let's look at this age text box. And if I double click on this thing, it'll take me right into the input form designer to look where this object is. So object browser is kind of cool in that it shows us what's inside of our objects, right? But it does one better, right, than that. It actually shows us down here on the bottom, it says what type of method it is, if at all anything. I know it's hard to see for those people. I'm going to bring this up a little bit. It's a member of this input form, and it tells us more information. Object browser is actually quite interesting to use. Right now I'm browsing my solution, but I can actually look at all components or .NET for Windows, or as an example, .NET, period, .NET. And I can search for things like my text box, as an example. I can also look up different properties. I got my resources and my settings. This is from my properties from my object itself, right? But the great thing is about this is that Object Browser allows us to look at different objects, right? And whatever I click on here, it gives me some context down here, right? So here's my age label, here's my age text box, my components, and it actually looks in there, like down into the base of what this thing is. And if you notice, it even tells us some interfaces. iComponent and iDisposable are a couple of interfaces that are tied into to this form. We'll get back to Object Browser another time, but for now I wanted to bring it up as something that does exist, that you can always look at the actual objects that are inside your program. Okay, so cool. So we've done almost everything, but now I want to print this thing out, right? And in your assignment number 3, in your assignment number 6, I have my print. I asked you for a print preview. Well, how do I do that? And by the way, printing and print preview and all that kind of stuff is going to be covered in part 3, programming 3. But I'm going to give you a little preview of the print preview, right? So if you look at on the controls here on the toolbox, if you go to printing on the left, and let's just collapse this common controls thing on the left. There's different options: printer, page setup dialog, print dialog, all this kind of stuff. I don't care about anything else. I only care about the print preview control, right? If I drag and drop that, I want to drag it towards the form itself, right? And I want to unclick, right? That's not what I wanted. It's not what I wanted, right? Undo, undo. That's not what I want. Print preview. The print preview dialog is what I really want. Print preview dialog, right? Now, if you notice, print preview dialog actually puts another control way down here. It's hard for you guys to see it, but it's down here in the form, right? It's not actually in the form, right? But it's actually something that's here, right? You see? Print preview dialog, right? And when I click on a print button, right, which by the way, I'm going to resize my output here for a second, right? And the way, of course, I'm going to do that is I'm going to put a button in here. So I'm going to go back to common controls. Actually, I got buttons. I got lots of buttons. Who needs stinking buttons? I got buttons. I'm going to click my submit button, Control C, Control V. I'm going to drag and drop it inside this output group box on the bottom, right here. And instead of submit, I'm going to change it to the properties so that it says print. In fact, we'll say print preview, right? Because we're not going to print actually. So make this a little bit larger. Print preview. What's it going to look like, right? I'm actually printing the form, not my output. And we'll say print preview button, right? And when I click on this button, it should bring up this other dialog, right? That's my idea here. So print preview dialog is actually down here. And if you notice, it actually has properties of its own on the right-hand side. It says auto size mode, grow only, document none, generate member, blah, 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 show icon, use anti-alias, la, la, la. We don't care about what this is. But one thing it does have is this print preview dialog 1, right? So we can just call this print preview 1, print preview by itself. Let's name it print preview. Let's see if I can do that. Rename it to print preview. What I really should do is call this print preview dialog, right? Because that's what it is. It's dialog that will come up, right? Print preview dialog. Which means I can access it now. Which means if I double click on print preview button, right, inside my button when it's clicked, so I'm just going to kind of minimize these little things. Well, what do I want to do? I want to bring up the print preview dialog. Bring up means show, right? Because remember, we did the message box.show, and a dialog box, a message box is a kind of dialog box with shortened controls. So I should be able to do the show method theoretically. So I'm going to say print preview dialog, which is my print preview dialog, dot show. Now, is it show or show dialog? Let's try show first. See what happens. Oh, Okay, let's try this out. So I want to click the print preview dialog. Oh, that's not cool. That's not what I want, right? Definitely not that one. Let's do the print preview instead of show dialog. See if that works. Oh, I got to stop debugging here for me to do that. Show dialog, right? And press play. Print preview. Oh, the hell, right? Shows the dialog, but my document does not contain any pages. What the hell, right? Well, if I click this print button, is it safe? What's it actually going to do, right? Print preview, right? If you want to know the truth is this. If I go back to my code, the print preview dialog, it'll bring up the dialog box, but it also has a bunch of other functions here. And if you notice, if I script through, there's like active form, right? Auto scroll, bottom, capture, blah blah blah, container, contains, right? There's also way down here, it'll give you the print command if I'm not wrong too. So print preview control, right? So if I start typing print preview control, and it says gets a value indicating the system Windows forms print preview control contained in this form, right? And my print preview control is this thing, right? My print preview dialog also, the other thing is it's a control, right? So I can't do one of these. It actually is something that does something. I can't do a print with this thing, right? I can't assign it. I can't do anything with it. I can activate it. I can certainly do that. I mean, I can call it active. I can close it. I can, do things with bounds and everything else. I can create it. I can dispose it. I can do all kinds of stuff, but it won't show anything until I show. I actually add pages to the control, right? So there's a couple of commands here that makes it work. It's not just the print preview dialog itself, but there's a couple of things that kind of assign pages to this thing. So, okay, I don't know how to do it. Let's see how we're going to do this. So print preview dialog, right? And C#. Print preview dialog class. And let's take a look and see what it could do. How do I use this thing? It says this is for .NET Framework 4.5, which is the right framework, right? And it should give me some examples because .NET MSDN shows me all the different form controls. By the way, if you put any control in here, it'll give you all the methods, and there's a lot to go through here. There's a lot of methods and stuff, and it'll even give you some examples way at the bottom, right? Which is what you want. So if you go down here and says, here's print preview dialog, and what we're actually doing is we're saying we're making this a print preview dialog 1. That's like what it's made from, print preview dialog. Print preview dialog is actually the name that we're assigning. It's actually a control, right? What I've done inadvertently is called this print preview dialog the same name as my control, which is bad. But I was trying to be smart, see? Because that's why I did. I kind of renamed this thing here to print preview dialog, right? So what if we made this print preview dialog 1 at the end? Rename this thing print preview dialog 1 just to keep it different. And now if you notice, it changes this right away automatically inside my form. I didn't do anything. It just changed my print preview dialog to print preview dialog 1. That's good. That's a good thing. That's the first thing I got to make sure that it doesn't clash with what I'm doing here. Print preview dialog 1. Okay. Well, this print preview dialog 1 is a new print preview dialog. Kind of don't need to do that. I can say my client size, my location, my name, my print page, this document print page, right? I can assign the page to it. That's what I want to do. Is a lot of stuff here for print. That's why we said it's going to be something we're going to keep to the next time, right? Print preview document is equal to document, right? And document would be the form itself, right? So that's something that might be useful for us, that this document is the document, the actual document itself. How did I get this document? So if you notice here, I'm looking at like, an explanation for how this all works, right? I'm looking at document, lowercase d, right? How did I get this document? Well, document lowercase d might be something that's a reserved word, right? Or .document. How do I assign my, oh wait. Print page event args. This is interesting. Print font. There's definitely print functions, but it's the document is equal to print. Okay, let's see if I can figure this out here. So if I go in here and I go document is equal to this. Is that right? Let's see if that makes any sense. Well, it kind of gives us a thing. It says, what the hell are you talking about, Tom? Tom, what are you talking about? How about active form? We tried that before. Active form. So I want to kind of do the form. Is that it? Right? Well, no, because it gives me an error. It says, cannot implicitly convert type system Windows form to system drawing printing print document. Hey. Print document. Okay. So document print preview class. So document is equal to print document. So print document, print dialog, right? How about active form? Huh? Form dot active form dot. No, doesn't do. Would that be enough? No. But I'm on the right track, right? And I'm gonna leave that for the next time we get together. You don't have to worry about that for tomorrow. I put it in there just because we have to talk about the print preview dialog, because that's what I asked you to come up with. And I'll have the solution for you next time we get together. The idea here is, though, that what you've done is you've got some input stuff as a recap. Again, tomorrow when you get in your exam, it's going to be a practical exam. There's not going to be any multiple choice, nothing for you to think about here. What you're going to have to do is create some kind of document. When you click the button, it generates a random number, which means you have to know how to do random numbers. Hint, hint, your random number should not be in the clicker. If it's in the clicker, like the actual random class, should not be in the clicker, because if it's in the clicker, it'll just generate the same number over and over again, right? Because you're accessing that same seed, right? It should be at the top of your class. What I might do is tell you that tomorrow, just give it to you as a here you go, right? Because some people will be confused, right? And when you click the button, it'll access, and that's all I want you to do is just simple controls that I'm going to ask you to kind of create, modify the controls, and away we go. Okay, so nothing crazy. Please practice your UI tonight. Try and make some simple forms. Try and do some interactivity with the forms. Make mistakes, and then hopefully, you'll be able to learn from them. Yes.
How do you make your first and last name go into your site?
I'm gonna update the link there. Hold on a second. Thank you. And take care. See you tomorrow. Added.